Hello, today I'm going to show you how to solve this past paper the easy way. Let's go there. Alright, so we're looking at the Cambridge IGCSE Computer Science, February-March 2024. We're looking at the paper 2-2. Of course, we'll be handling the programming part as usual. Here's the question. The question says a student in a class are recording the amount of time in minutes spent in front of a screen for each day of the week. The one-dimensional array student name contains the names of the students in the class. So let's take note of the data structures required. Student name contains the names of the students in the class. The two-dimensional array screen time is used to impute the number of minutes on each day spent in front of a screen. Okay, the position of each student's data in the two arrays is the same. For example, the student stored at index 10 in student's name is the same as the screen time. So the student in index 10 is the owner of the screen times in index 10 as well. So the variable class size contains the number of students in the class. So this is the question. Okay, I am just going to show us an Excel sheet which I have prepared in order for us to have a mental picture of the question. Meanwhile, I'm going to skip all of this and just read to this other part, because of course you know I'm going to copy this. So you must use pseudocode or program code and add comments to explain how your code works. All input and output must contain suitable messages. So this part is very important, so take note of it. Comments are very important. Okay, suitable messages, very important. Assume that the array student name and variable class size already contains the required data. So of course we're not going to need this part in the exams. However, because as our approach is, we need to run this program so that you can be sure that this program is running. So we need to fill up this, get a value for the class size, and initialize any other thing that we need to use here. You do not need to declare any arrays or variables. You may assume that this has already been done. Okay, so that is for the exam, but for us, we will do all of that just to be sure that our program works. So I did this in Excel just to show us the logic of the problem. All right, I don't think we need it, so let me take this out. So the idea is that you have some students. Okay, so I limited mine to just 5. And then you have their screen times in minutes. Screen time. So I just dropped some random numbers here. So it allows all the students to enter their daily minutes of screen times for the past week. Okay, so each of them will have to enter for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All right, then calculate the total number of minutes of screen time for each student in the week. How do we do that? You get the sum of all of this. So I did that already here for each of them. Okay, counts for each student the number of days with more than 300 minutes of screen time. All right, so in each of them, you come here, you count the number of days that has more than 300 screen time. Okay, so that is what I did here. Okay, so you count which of them in this range has more than 300 as a value. So I used the count to get that. Okay, calculate the average weekly minutes of screen time for the whole class. Okay, the average for the whole class. So this is it here. Get the average for the whole class. So you do the total and then you find the average of the total. Okay, finds the student with the lowest weekly minutes of screen time. Okay, so that one, we will just see it here that this person is the one with the lowest minute. Okay, from the sum of the minutes the student has spent on the screen. Okay, so I put the name of the student, so you output for each of them their names, and then the total screen time in hours and minutes. Okay, so you do that, so which is what I did here. So this is the total number of the screen time. I converted this to hours and this to minutes just by dividing by 60, getting the whole number part. Yeah, the whole number part, and then get the remainder when you divide by 60. All right, So this will be 22 hours 1 minute, 19 hours 22 minutes. So what I just did there is to concatenate them, okay, just to join this and that and add hours and minutes. Okay, number of days with more than 300 minutes of screen time. Okay, so you display the number of days by doing the counting, of course, which is this one. Okay, and then finally you output the average weekly minutes of screen time for the whole class, which will be the average of the total of each of them. Okay, output the name of the student with the lowest weekly screen time. Okay, so the student that you have already gotten here, you just display the child's name. Okay, so that's basically what this program this problem is all about. Now let's get it done. Okay, so right now I have copied the question already. Let's begin to look at the data structures that we're going to need. So we are going to need student name, we will need screen time. Okay, we will need screen time, we need class size. Okay, so let's use 5. What else do we need? Okay, so that will be it for now. Okay, so because we intend to run our program, we are going to add some students' names here. Okay, so I want to also create another array that will contain the days. Okay, so that will be Monday to Friday. Okay, so this part is absolutely unnecessary, but I decided to do this to make the programming a bit easier for me. So to get the number of days, we just need to get the length of this array. Okay, so let me call it number of days. That will be equal to the length of days. As need be, we can always come back here to add any variable that we need or declare it in any other level that we think we have need for it. So you can easily drop some comment here just to tell us what and what you want to use that for. All right, so we're done with the comment. Now let's begin to solve the problem. It allowed all the students to enter their daily minute of screen time for the past week. Okay, so the idea is that we will need a loop id in range. So this will be the class size for each of the students, and then we will need another loop for each so for each of the students for each day, right? So now let's make it a little interactive here. So for the students, you print the student's name. Okay, so you print the student's name and then you request for their screen time to be imputed. All right, now do we need any form of validation here, although it wasn't mentioned? Okay, but I think it is necessary for us to check to ensure that the screen time is not less than 0. Yeah, although it wasn't mentioned at all. So we need a variable to use. So let's call it minutes. So let's call it -1, and then while minutes okay, wrong spelling. While minutes is less than 0, okay, so doing this is going to keep displaying the days enter the number of minutes for Monday, enter for Tuesday, enter for Wednesday. Okay, so that way the program becomes very interactive. All right, now once we get this, we need to store it somewhere. Okay, so let's call it time. Let us create that as a new 1D array to store the time for each of the students. So having done this, the next thing we need to do is to return the minutes to the default value so that it can be possible for us to take in another value and still do a validation. Yeah, and then after doing that, finally you can now add all the screen time for the particular student into the general screen time. Now, after doing this, it is important for us to return our time for the individual students to empty. Okay, so we need to empty it so that it can take in another value. All right, so having done this, I think we can easily check to see if this works properly by printing it. So let's print. What do we need to print? We need to print the screen time. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so this is the idea for James. Enter the screen time in minutes for Monday. Let me do something here. Let me add some space there. Okay, so let's assume it is 123 minutes. So we made a mistake here. This should go this way. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's try and see. Okay, so let's say, okay, so let's say we're doing an invalid number here. It will keep us trapped there. Okay, so let's do 123. So it has moved to Tuesday. Okay, so we keep entering, so we'll keep entering for Friday, and then it's going to move to the next person, which is Andrew from the list. You see it? Okay, so we just keep entering, Oh, that's a high value. Again, it has shown us for the next person. Look at that mistake there. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Okay, so this looks like everything is working on well. So you have the number of minutes for each of the students kept, okay, inside of the 2D array. Good, so let's proceed. So the next part of the question says calculate the total number of minutes for screen time for each student in the week. Okay, now we can do this here where we are getting the total, we're adding up the minutes at once, or we can choose to do it in a different loop. Okay, so but if we do it here, it will make the code more efficient, like reduce the number of loops. But if we do it here, it will make it a little more easier for understanding sake. So which is it going to be, efficiency or understanding? Okay, as a teacher, let me go for understanding. So we need another loop here. Okay, so we're just going to repeat the same thing that we did here for clarity. Okay, but we don't need to do this. All right, what do we need now? So we need to find the total for each of the students. Okay, total minutes. Let's call it 0. And then what are we going to do? I think we need to put that here, the total minutes for each student. Okay, so that means we'll do total minutes, and then we'll get the screen time for each student for each day. So this will give us the total number of minutes for each student. Okay, so I think we should take this and drop the comment here. Okay, count for each student the number of days with more than 300 minutes of screen time. Okay, so what do we need here, since we're doing it for each student? Okay, so let's say count over 300. Let's call it 0. Okay, so the next thing we need to check, we need to confirm if this screen time for that very student is more than 300, then we need to do a count. Yeah, we need to do a count. We need to do count over this equals that. Yeah, so we need to increment it by 1. Okay, so we can take the whole of this and drop it as a comment there. This one says calculate the average weekly minute of screen time for the whole class. So before you can get the average for the whole class, you need to get the total of the total, right? You need to get the total weekly. This is the total for the students, so we need to get the total for the week. Okay, so let's say we need weekly total. So we need to start it off somewhere, so let's assume we're dropping it here. That means we need to come here, do plus equals weekly total. All right, weekly minutes, sorry, that should be weekly minutes. That's this man here. So for each of the students, we're adding their minutes so that we can have the weekly total minutes for all the students. So we need to calculate the average weekly minutes. So how do we do that? We already have the weekly total here, so we need to divide it by the class size. Yeah, so average weekly equals weekly total divided by the class size. All right, find the student with the lowest weekly minutes of screen time. So we need to check if the total minutes for the student is less than, we need to know the lowest minute. So here we can just declare a variable here, call it lowest minutes, and maybe use any very crazy high value. Okay, so if this is less than weekly minutes, which is the lowest minute, okay, if that is the case, then the lowest minute needs to change. Lowest minute needs to change to the total minutes. Okay, we need to come here, so let's copy this and drop it here. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to output for each of the students the name, total weekly screen time. Okay, so where do we need to do that? We still need to do that inside of this loop here. For each of the students, we need to output the name. All right, since we need to output for each of the students their name, the total weeks of screen time, the number of days with more than 300 minutes. So we need to move this comment to somewhere here. Okay, so we can choose to paste it here and use it to run the rest of the task. So I'll put the name of each child. So you do print. So we can say student name, that will be ID because of here. Okay, so we need to get the student's name printed. So the next thing is for us to print the total week's screen time in hours and minutes. Okay, so for the student, we need to print that. So how do we get that? You know, we have already gotten the total minutes here already. Okay, so that means we need to come here and do total minutes. We need to get the whole number part. So this is how you get it. Okay, that will be in hours, and then total minutes again, the remainder, that will be in minutes. Okay, spelling issues. So what else do we need? Okay, let's do this so that it will skip a line before printing the next student's data. So what else do we need? Number of days with more than 300 minutes. Oh, remember that we got that already here, right? So we need to print it now. Calculate the average weekly minutes of the screen time. Okay, we've calculated that already. Okay, so this part now says outputs the average weekly minutes of screen time for the whole class. So that is where we can now output so that is the average. What else? Outputs the name of the student with the lowest weekly screen time. Okay, so the student who has this, yeah, we need to get the ID of the student. Okay, so how do we achieve that? We can come here and say student ID, or we can just call it lowest student. So let's call it 0. Okay, so we now need to come here, yes, here, and change the value of the lowest student to be equal to ID. Yeah, so if we check that the total minute is less than the lowest minute, then we take note of the lowest minute and take note of the ID of the student who has the lowest minute, and then we'll come here to output the name of the student. All right. Okay, so this should solve the entire problem at once. Okay, so let's try to run and see if this program works effectively. So I want us to use these values that I've used here. Okay, so let's try and see if we're going to get the same result as we got here. So comparing them, you can see that James has 22 hours 1 minute, which is correct. How many? 3 of them are more than 300, which if you count, you would see there 1, 2, 3. Good. The same thing with Andrew, 19 hours 22 minutes. Beautiful. 2. Good. Emeka here has 21 hours 19 minutes. 21 hours 19 minutes. It's 2 here, which is correct. Nkechi has 23 hours 22 minutes. 23 hours 22 minutes, correct. One of them is more than 300, which is this one. Okay. And then finally, Salami has 14 hours 46 minutes. 14 hours 46 minutes with no time more than 300, which is 0 here. Okay, then the average is 1210. So let's check. Okay, which is the average. Okay, and the student with the lowest screen time is Salami, which is this very value here. Okay, so with this, we've successfully solved this problem. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed it. Please do well to share to your friends, do well to subscribe so that when next we drop a video, you'll be the first to know, and hit the notification button. Okay, thank you. I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye for now.